Really, our English language learner program has two goals, and one is to make sure and to ensure that our students acquire the English language. And the next is that they meet the state standards for academic achievement. This is a visual that really reflects what all the essential components or elements of an EL program should have. We should have alignment with standards, instruction, and assessment. We should make sure that our professional development is targeted and research-based, and we must make sure that our parent and community are involved in this process. And I have to say, just a little kudos really quickly. Last week we held our DLAC, which is our District English Language Advisory Committee here at the district office, and we had a lot of parents who came and gave lots of input. So I so appreciate them, and I really appreciate those four back there because they're the people who truly make it happen. Before I turn it over to Rob, I wanted to share a little bit on the accountability side. We talk a lot about API and AYP, and AYP is the annual yearly progress, and our English learners are a subgroup that are part of AYP. So I'm going to introduce another acronym here, and that's called an AMAO, which is an Annual Measurable Achievable or Achievement Objective. There are three that we have here, and the first AMAO reflects the percentage of EL students making annual progress on the California English Language Development Test, also known as CELT. There are three ways that our ELs can meet this requirement. The first, if we have students who are at beginning or early intermediate or intermediate, we gauge them to make at least one level gain per year. So if they started out at beginning, by the next year we'd want them to be early intermediate. The next portion is the early advanced and the advanced students. If they have not met English proficiency, what we'd like for them to do is to gain English proficiency. And then those students who are ELs who are English proficient, we want them to maintain that proficiency level. AMAO2 has changed slightly. You see that there's a chart there that's divided into two. We have a cohort of students who have been in the program for more than 5 years or more, and then there's a cohort of students who have been in less than 5 years. AMAO2 measures the extent to which ELs are attaining the English proficiency levels on CELT. So you can see here that less than 5-year cohort, we had 442 students. We had 151 who actually met that objective, which meant that we had 34% who met the target. And actually the target was 17.4. So we're really exceeding the state target. On the other side, we have 5 years or more cohort, and you can see that we're at 62.1% of students who have moved to the target level, and we've again exceeded the target, which is 41.3. The last accountability measure is AMAO3, and this directly aligns with our CST. So our English learners are also held to the same expectation as all other students, where they must also meet the participation rate, which is 95%, and they also need to reach English language arts, which is 56%, and math is 56.4%. So I just thought it would be helpful, beneficial for you to see that there's also an accountability measure within our English learner program, and we're constantly looking to make sure that our English learners are acquiring the two goals of acquiring or ensuring English proficiency, and then also meeting the targets for CSTs. So I'm going to hand it over to Rob at this time, and he's going to give you more details for the English Learner Program. This slide shows you the schools that each EL teacher is assigned to. And you can see that Jennifer has the full high school and Valley. Rob has Wells. Shova has 4 of our elementary schools, and Heidi has both Fallon Elementary and Middle, as well as Dublin Elementary.
Good evening, Dr. Hankey, Mr. Cunningham, members of the board. My name is Robert Herdman. I am the ELD coordinator and teacher at Wells Middle School. I've been with the district for 11 years. I've been doing the ELD program at Wells for 9, and I believe this is my 4th year doing the ELD presentation in front of the board. As you can see, the various members, clearly Shobha, the MVP with the 4 schools, and her award clearly justifies it, although we have a great team all around. So I'm here to talk about exactly what the DLD program is, to reacquaint some of you or to inform some of you exactly what the ELD program is, how a child gets initiated into the ELD program, how the process works, and where that all leads to. There is a definite set of procedures we have to go through before a child is put into the ELD program. There's nothing that just says, okay, we're going to put you in ELD. We think you need the services. There are clear steps that we go through, and it all gets started when they enrolled at Dublin Unified. They fill out their home language survey. Now is part of their registration process. It's right there on the form, and there are 4 questions detailing their language spoken at home, most frequently used, what language the child grew up speaking. That's the home language survey. If any of the answer to those first 3 questions is yes, that they have spoken another language, they are immediately given the CELL test, which is administered within the first 30 days of the school year. And this would go for any level that they enter Dublin Unified at, if they come from kindergarten, straight up through high school, coming from another country. If they've come from another district, then they've already had the CELL test, presumably. If it was in California, perhaps not, if it was from another state. After taking the CELL test, we analyze the results. If the results indicate that they have scored in the highest 2 levels, early advanced or advanced, they are deemed to be initially fluent English proficient, and they are put into the mainstream population of the particular school that they enrolled at. If they do not score in the highest 2 levels, they are considered an ELD student at that point. They are an English language development student, and the process for them begins at Dublin Unified for what courses they will be taking depending on at their particular school or grade level. In grades K to 5, if they are limited English proficient, they would be either classified as beginning, early intermediate, intermediate, early advanced, or advanced. But again, the top 2 levels, they probably, if they scored that on their first assessment, they wouldn't be seeing the ELD teachers. In grades K to 5, our elementary teachers run a pull-out program where they would take the lower tier students for 30 minutes a day or twice a week, and they pull them into another room and see them work on their grammar, reading, literature skills outside of the classroom, in addition to, of course, being put into a classroom with a CLAD certified teacher, which all Dublin Unified teachers are at this point. CLAD has been around for quite some time now, and I know that we in Dublin Unified, all teachers have the CLAD credential, which is a cross-cultural credential and specializing in the teaching of English language learners. On the right side of the screen, again, if they were deemed to be fluent English proficient, they would just be placed in the mainstream classroom and receive all the regular services of any other student. In grades K to 5, if you are looking to exit the English language learner program, you would continue taking the CELL test each year. Once you score in the early advanced or higher, which is advanced, that would be one thing that you would need to accomplish. The second thing that you would need to do is score proficient or advanced on your CSTs. And the third thing you would need to do is score at least a 2 or higher for your language arts component of your report card. Once those objectives are achieved, there would be a consultation with the teacher, the parents, the ELD specialist and they would decide that this child is most likely ready to be exited from the ELD program, in which case they get reclassified, fluent English proficient, and their status as an ELD student at that point would be considered fluent English proficient, redesignated. What is a nice feature is that for 2 years, even after this reclassification process, they are monitored by the specialist, and this would be even transitioning from elementary to middle school or middle school to high school to make sure that they are not falling behind. If so, it is possible that they would be re-enveloped into the ELD program to receive support services if for whatever reason it was deemed necessary that they receive the ELD support. So it's nice they are not just cut loose to fly on their own and we never see them again. They are monitored for 2 years to make sure that they are succeeding, and I think we do a good job of watching out for the students in that regard. In grades 6 through 12 in the secondary, it's basically the same reclassification process as well, or the program is basically the same. In the upper levels, not only do the students go into a mainstream classroom with a regular core teacher receiving their regular English classes, or in the high school's case, they might receive a sheltered English class, but they also get pulled out for 1 period a day of extra English support. So in essence, they would be receiving 2 or even 3 periods of English a day in the higher levels, which is a nice feature of the 6 through K program, is that they are actually receiving multiple periods of instruction in English throughout the day. Same thing would be placed in a regular classroom if they were deemed initially fluent upon coming to one of the secondary schools. Exiting from the program in the secondary schools is pretty much exactly the same. You have to score early advanced or advanced on the CELT test. You have to score proficient or advanced on the CSTs, and you must be maintaining at least a C in English or language arts in your core classes. Parent consultation, meeting with myself or the ELD specialists to determine whether we think you're ready to go. In that case, you are exited from the program, and you are still monitored for the 2 years after that. I think this is a very fascinating slide and one that exemplifies our district over the past 8 years, and I've been working here since 2000, and you can really see the number of English language learners has just gone up. I know we've grown in that time, and that's partially responsible for it, but the trend clearly seems to be that we are increasing our English language learner population every year. 573 up from just 136 a mere 7 years before this latest data. So here's a nice a slide indicating the progression of ELL students in the district. And if you look from left to right, it details the constancy of the ELD population pretty much in any one site. There's not a whole lot of change from left to right at any one school, but what it really illustrates, I think, is that you go from elementary into middle school down to high school, the number of ELD students decreases significantly, which would indicate to me, of course, that they are progressing through the system and out of the system by the time they are reaching high school. That it seems to be a nice trend of starting off in the program and decreasing as they move throughout Dublin Unified. Some facts about it are 41 different second languages, which I was even amazed by that. In my classroom alone, I think I have about 14, but spread that out amongst all the various schools, that's incredible. Over 707 students are self-tested, which is, and especially for the elementary teachers, I know it's a lot. There's a lot of reading and writing to correct, and it's quite the process to get all this self-testing done, and we get it done within about 30 days of their first enrollment. And of those 707, 535 were identified as English language learners. The programs themselves may differ a little bit from elementary to middle to high school, but they all retain these features across the board in that they are targeted to English language learners. In other words, we are not just taking strategies that would be used for mainstream classrooms and just applying it, getting a second dose of that. We are trained in ELL methodology. We go to conferences. We've all been doing it for quite some time, and the focus is on reading, writing, speaking, listening, all 4 disciplines of acquiring the English language. There's lots of grammar, syntax, vocab. There's assessments that go on. The CELT is an annual assessment. There are many assessments we use in the classrooms from semester to semester to assess their progress. Of course, we're taught, all the students are taught by CLAD certified teachers and people in the field who have been doing this for some time and who have a lot of knowledge in ELD program. Here's some of the practices that we use. We provide ELD to all English learners, including those to advanced levels and in the mainstream classrooms. Try to group them together amongst proficiency. This is something our district does an excellent job with, is not having the lower levels mixed in with the higher levels. We really do a good job of grouping them according to their ability, not necessarily even their grade level. If it's, let's say at the middle school, there may be a 6th grader sitting next to an 8th grader, but they're both brand new from another country. Clearly, their ability levels would be more in common than a 6th grader and an 8th grader would be outside the scope of that type of instruction. We're assessing them constantly. We have our own ELD standards that we can use to assess their needs. And we work with the teachers to make sure that they're getting their needs met in the other areas as well, in their science, and their history, and their mathematics classrooms, meeting with them, giving them strategy ideas, assessing them, giving them alternative assessments when appropriate for students that it would be a challenge for them to meet the regular standards at that time. I know we do a lot of collaboration with these other teachers and amongst ourselves as well to make sure that the kids are getting exactly what they need. Before we get to questions, I would just like to say I think there's 3 things that make our ELD program successful here in Dublin Unified. And number 1, I think it's the staff for sure, that we have, in my opinion, one of the most outstanding ELD staffs around. I think the second is the support that we receive from yourselves. I always feel very supported in the ELD program. I think our needs are met on the district level. From working with other districts and seeing the way other districts run their ELD program, I think we have one of the better ELD programs in, I can't speak for all of California, but in the areas that I've seen, we really do a great job of everything we just talked about, grouping them, having separate periods for them, and just, I feel very supported by the district in that way. And the last thing, I think, is our standards. I think we hold our ELD students up to the same high standards that we give to all the mainstream students. And by holding them to those same standards, I think it's known from the time that they go into the ELD program that their goal is to not just be okay for an ELD student, but it's to meet and surpass the goals of all students at Dublin Unified. So thank you for your support in the ELD program.